Bard on the Plains podcast with Mike McPeak. It's about stories, mine and yours.
My dad passed away at the end of my junior year of high school. Even though I have 3 brothers and a sister, it was just Mom and me to take care of the farm. He passed away from complications from a prostate surgery. In my dad's typical fashion, he worked right up until the day he had to check into the hospital for his surgery. It was a Sunday afternoon. He was trying to get a field of flax planted. He just didn't have the time to finish it, so he had me do it so he could get to the hospital on time. This wasn't unusual for my dad. There was always one more thing that had to get done. It drove my mom crazy. Getting ready to go to the meeting, he just had to make one more round in the field. Or we were ready to go to church and he was hurrying to get the cows fed. I don't think it was because he wasn't punctual. It was just that there was always work to be done on the farm, and my dad grew up trying to get all the work done. He was born in 1915 and grew up during the Depression. His dad passed away when he was 8. Even though his mom remarried, they couldn't keep the 2 quarters, that's 320 acres for you non-farmers out there, of land that his dad had homesteaded back in 1883. They had to move to a little place along Dry Lake. Here, he, his 2 brothers and sister, did what was necessary to survive. Education was important, and they walked 5 miles to go to high school in Wool Lake. He even took a year off to help, which is why him and his younger brother graduated together. After that, he joined the Civilian Conservation Corps and went out to the Black Hills to work for the government. After that, he came back and farmed with his brother until he was able to get his own land. He met my widowed mom with her 2 kids and then proceeded to have my sister and brother, and then wait 14 years to have me. Never rush perfection, or why do something when you can wait 14 years to do it, which might explain my procrastination. Anyway, there was always work to do, and Dad was there to get it done. And that's what he was doing on the day he went to the hospital, but he couldn't quite get it done, so he had me finish it. I didn't know it at the time, and I didn't really figure it out until I was writing this, but Dad had passed the farm down to me. The next day he had a surgery, had a heart attack on the table, and died 10 days later. So basically, death was Dad's retirement. Even though Dad wasn't working anymore, life still goes on and there's still work to get done on the farm. Obviously, Mom and I were in a state of shock and trying to deal with burial plans and estate matters. But the nice thing about living in a rural area like ours is that we had neighbors who were there to help. That is the country and biblical way. We are always willing to help each other out. Maybe it was helping to move cows or drive truck during grain harvest. We also formed a silage crew when fall came around and we had to process the corn in the fodder to feed the animals in the winter. Someone had a silage cutter, others would have silage wagons, and those of us with silos would provide a blower to blow the silage up a pipe to the top of the silo. We'd all get together and help each other make silage. Although we were running businesses, that doesn't mean that we were competing against one another, and we were willing to help. We were there for each other during ordinary times, and when the extraordinary came along, they stepped up to the plate in a big way. Dad hadn't gotten all the crops in before he went to the hospital, so one of the neighbors organized the others to form a farming bee. Some tilled the land while others planted the crops, while others ran over the planted fields with a spring-tooth drag to finish the seedbed. There were about 40 people that showed up to help. They worked most of the morning and a little of the afternoon. The neighbor ladies brought over food for them to replenish themselves with. In fact, the food wasn't a problem the whole week because everyone was stopping in with hot dishes and other foods. We had people checking in on us to see how we were doing, if there was anything that needed to be done, or just drop off some food. Just neighbors taking care of neighbors the way it was meant to be. There was no government agency there to provide us with handouts or counseling services to help us over our emotional turmoil. Just people helping people. Actually, the government was more of a hindrance. We had to deal with the state taxes because there were people who thought they were entitled to things that Mom, Dad, and I, and the kids had worked for. We had to deal with a lawyer, but thankfully the one we had was really good and ended up being our neighbor when we moved to town. Back in those days, wives weren't considered equal partners, so Mom would have had to inherit the farm. That meant she would have to pay taxes on that. For those who aren't familiar with farms, the land can be worth quite a lot, but that doesn't mean farmers are rich. They don't have a lot of cash and more than likely have loans to pay off. So they would have to sell assets to pay the taxes that were meant to punish the rich. There were a lot of farms that were lost because of this. Thankfully, the laws were changed a few years later, but that didn't do us any good at the time. But here's where being a pack rat can come in handy. To be fair, Mom and Dad grew up in the Depression, so they didn't waste anything. But back to the story. Mom had saved a check from the insurance that she had gotten from the car accident that killed her first husband, and it was used as down payment on the farm, so she was considered a co-owner, although she had contributed as much in labor to the farm in the form of managing the house and helping do chores as Dad did doing the manual labor. Because of that, we were able to avoid a lot of state taxes, but it still took time and as well as money to pay the lawyer to process everything. Mom and I managed to make it through all that. I farmed for another 15 years after that until I realized I wasn't really cut out to be a farmer. And I'd gone through the farm crisis of the 80s and saw more and more government encroachment and control. I had gotten tired and burned out from working hard and having nothing to show for it. Thankfully, we still have the farm and trust that me and my siblings benefit from. But there are days where I wish I could go back and try again. So what I painted is a picture of a time gone by, but a day I hope we can get back to in some form or another. A time when neighbors knew neighbors and were willing to help each other. Instead, what we have now is nameless and faceless bureaucrats with one-size-fits-all remedies, and problems must be made to fit the remedies. A government that taxes people and then takes a percentage and spends the other 25% of that money on to help. We can change directions. Can we change directions and start going back? I hope so, but it will be tough. We now have a generation that thinks it's entitled to other people's money and don't have to work for anything. But I hope that when everyone starts to see more and more of their hard-earned money taken directly from them through taxes and indirectly through inflation, and then told they have to work harder to get less, while other people are living off the tax rolls, I think things will start to change. In the meantime, try to help those around you. It doesn't have to be money. It could just be some encouragement and a loaf of bread. Once we start to do that, then everyone's life will change. But most of all, just try to help one another. If you'd like to contact me or find out more about the show, I can be found on Twitter at BardOnThePlains. My Facebook is McPeak Podcasts. I also have a locals at McPeak Podcasting. You can email me at bardontheplains@gmail.com. My website for the show is bardontheplains.com. The website for my podcasting is mcpeakpodcasting.com. And my website for all the other stuff that I do can be found at mike-mcpeak.com. I thank you for listening, and please come back again.